Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Get Inspired and Live in Your Power. And super excited to have another amazing guest on our show today, Stephanie Brown. Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for joining
Hello.
us today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I was super excited to get Stephanie on our podcast because we had just a fun little conversation and everything that she was sharing. I'm like, oh my gosh, my listeners need to hear this. They need to hear your story and they need to hear what you're doing now and kind of where you came from and everything, because I know that there are people out there that can really relate to your current situation and also your past situation that kind of brought you where you are today. So thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. We're just going to jump in. I'm going to tell a little bit about Stephanie, kind of do a little bit of a bio here. And then there's so much in here. I just feel like I might pause during the bio and say, tell us a little bit more about that, and
Awesome.
then get back to the bio. So we'll just kind of see how this goes.
Okay.
So Stephanie Brown brings a wealth of experience as both a seasoned leader and a personal growth strategist, backed by a diverse history in program management. She has worked for IBM for 33 years. And during that 33-year tenure, she has gained a profound understanding of the tech industry and the significance of embracing one's authentic self. And I know we're going to talk a lot about embracing your authentic self because that's what you're so great at. I was really interested to see how these two kind of came in the same sentence, understanding the tech industry and embracing one's authentic self. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. When I talk about being authentic in the tech industry, I worked with a lot of co-founders, a lot of team members that were in different countries. So I spent a lot of time in China, Germany, Brazil. And really, as we worked with them, I think for them, it was challenging to try to Americanize themselves. And as I worked with the various teams, I really wanted them, and this is how I started thinking about authenticity. I wanted them to be able to show up with their culture, with their values, etc. But as I started doing that, thinking about them, I started focusing on me and asking myself the question, hey, are you showing up as your authentic self? And so as I began to dive into that more, I realized that I was not, and started to work on myself and say, okay, how am I going to show up as an American to these meetings? How am I going to show up as a Christian even to these meetings? And so through just a bunch of different things that I worked on for myself and self-reflection, I became more and more of myself as I was working through IBM before I left. So I really felt that toward the end, they saw the real Stephanie Brown.
Wow, that's amazing. So 33 years, and it was maybe only the last few years that they actually saw the real Stephanie Brown.
Yes,
You caused me to kind of think this through a little bit because in different cultures, they obviously, IBM is an American company, right? And
correct.
so
Yes.
they, coming to these meetings are probably thinking, oh, they are expecting a certain thing of me or whatever. And and even thinking about like being an American, being a Christian, there are certain ways that we're kind of like maybe expected to show up, or we think that we're supposed to show up. But if we're showing up the way we think we're supposed to, we're not being our authentic self, right?
Correct.
Because there are as diverse ways to be a Christian and an American as there are people in America and people in the Christian religion. Every
Yeah.
single one of us has our own relationship with God. We all have our own, ideals and values and the things, the way that we communicate our American selves. And so, yeah, that is huge to be your authentic self in a team, even if there's expectations or me personally feeling like there might be some expectations.
Yes, I agree. And especially when, even at times when we would travel as a team, where there were certain values that I embrace. And when you're traveling overseas, you don't want to be by yourself. But there were times when I had to express my values, and I was blessed that the team understood them. So as we began to travel more, they knew, okay, here's what Stephanie values when she travels. Here's what she doesn't. And I was just amazed as different team members would say, okay, let's do this because I know she would enjoy this, or I know she would not enjoy this. And just standing up to that every time and being that same person, regardless if I was in the office or in a different country or in a different state, just really help others to embrace it as well and to respect me even more.
Wow, I love that. And kind of back to that idea of expectations, if we don't communicate who we are, if we don't communicate that authenticity, then there might be different expectations that aren't
Yes.
true to our values that can create uncomfortableness, some awkward moments. And I know I've had situations where, and traveling is actually one of those, where you kind of have to come together as a team so that everybody's safe, everybody's happy,
Mm.
everybody gets where they're supposed to be and all of that. I've had a lot of situations like that. And there have been times when I've had to really stand up and speak my values. And
Yes,
and I do love that when you're in a team where those values are respected, and because you spoke them, now from then on, they're expecting that from you, that there's that
absolutely.
expectation, which kind of helps you toe the line for your own values, which is
Yes,
kind of a side benefit that's really awesome.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. Well, let's get back to your bio.
Okay.
Thanks for letting us, kind of delve in a little bit there. With her strategic mindset, strong leadership and coaching skills, Stephanie has played a pivotal role in guiding others through challenges and transitions towards leading empowered lives. Also, she mentions in her leisure time, she enjoys volunteering on one of her city's commissioners board, and she's learned to play the ukulele, which I thought was really cool. I don't know if I've met anybody like face to face that has learned to play the ukulele. That's really
I'm still learning, but I'm getting there.
very good. Very good. So you've developed some really strong leadership skills, mindset skills, coaching skills to help guide others through challenges and transitions towards leading empowered lives. I'm just repeating what I've seen because I feel like that is part of when you stand up in your authenticity, when you begin leading an authentic life, that really is an empowered life, isn't it?
Yes. Yes,
When
it
you
is.
have the confidence to really step up and say, this is who I am.
Absolutely.
So we know that your passion is helping people in their, to step up in their authenticity. And I know from talking with you earlier that entrepreneurship and empowering individuals in that transformative growth that happens as an entrepreneur is part of your passion as well. Let's talk a little bit about your coaching business. I know originally you had named it Stephanie Brown Coaching and Consulting LLC, which is kind of a mouthful. I mean, it does say what you do for sure. So everybody knows, okay, she's Stephanie Brown, she coaches and consults. Awesome. But your new name that you've come up with just recently, like in the last year, I think he said that you changed it to really speaks way more volumes than your old name. Tell everybody your new name of your coaching business.
Okay, so the new name is Her Authenticity. And the name came to me last year, but the process to get to the name actually started several years ago. I had started what we call a connect group at church. It's similar to a small group. I was the director of connect groups. And so I started a small group with ladies from my church. And the interesting thing is, my original focus was to help them to kind of get out of their box. So I was with them, I was teaching them, yes, you are a Christian, but there's so much more that you can do. So go embrace your gifts, go embrace your talents, and see what else, God wants you to do in that space. And so as I did the first semester, they wanted more. So then I did another semester and they wanted more. So I kind of wrote a mini program for them. And then once that ended, I started thinking back to my days at IBM and some of my friends and colleagues who had either gone on and started their own business or they were still there. And it was kind of the flip side. It's like now for my professional friends and those who are entrepreneurs, et cetera, they want to also embrace their Christianity and bring it into their professional side. So I saw the merging of these two different groups. And I felt like the Lord kept saying to me, her authenticity, her authenticity. And so that's kind of where the name came from.
Wow, that's so powerful. It really is a testament to how God leads us, isn't it? How everything
Yes.
just kind of evolves one step at a time. You, at the beginning, this is just like a church group that you put together. It wasn't something that you were maybe even thinking of making. Were you thinking of turning it into a business at that point?
No, I was not.
Yeah. And I think God starts that way. It's like, I'm just helping, I'm just serving, I'm just offering stuff that I know. Like, it's so easy. And just that leads to that. And then all of a sudden you have a name that is
Yes.
amazing, that says exactly what you do. It's women that you work with, and corporate women, I think, is mostly who you work with, right?
Yes.
And wanting to focus on your bold message for them then is embracing their authenticity within whatever business corporate situation that they're in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Just kind of a little tangent. I've had a lot of different mentors and coaches throughout my career. And one of the first things that they always teach you is to identify your audience and to, find names like for your programs and things that really speak to that audience and that really say, you can say it and they know exactly what you do. And like I said, the very beginning name, Stephanie Brown Coaching and Consulting LLC, told exactly what you did, but this new name, and and it was given to you by God as you were allowing yourself to be open for more. And so I think that's the difference between, like, the world's way is come up with the name, come up with the audience, figure out who you want to serve and what your message is or whatever. But God's way is not always that way. God's
Right.
way, in fact, I would say it's not typically that way. It
Right.
usually is, what are you willing to give right now? Are you willing to take action on this little tiny thing that I'm giving you inspiration to do? And then that's going to help prepare you for the big bomb that I'm going to drop on you
Yes.
in about a year. Cool. So tell me, because I know you are very strong in your faith, let's talk a little bit more about how that evolved and kind of how you saw God's hand in that.
Okay, sure. So yeah, as I mentioned, I was teaching the Connect group and basically building it as I was going along. And then probably about a year later, I had a friend call me and we had actually started at IBM at the same time in Connecticut 20 something years ago. And she had moved on to another company. We had actually sold her division, so she moved different cities and just kind of kept in contact. And she called me and she was going through a situation. And she said, I really could use a friend and maybe even some coaching as I go through this. She said, I don't want to go through it alone. And so I mentioned to her, hey, I'm into coaching now. I'm doing a lot with coaching. So let's get together one weekend and let's just share and kind of, see if I can help you. And she said, do you mind if I invite a friend or two? I said, perfect. Well, that actually turned out to something bigger than we thought. I went to her house and there were about 20 women there
Wow.
that Saturday. So we had
That's the coach's
refreshment.
dream.
Exactly. So it's this little event. And I started speaking to those ladies about their purpose and understanding who they are, which is what I also offer in my program. And within about 5, 10 minutes, I could see that there was a lot of emotion in the room. And one of the ladies just finally broke the silence because I had them do an exercise where they had to be silent. And she said, do we have boxes of tissues? And you could almost hear like all of the women kind of like, okay, good. I'm not the only one feeling this emotion. I'm not the only one that can take my mask off because we were talking about taking the mask off, being yourself. And At the end of that, now again, I was only prepared to talk to her. So at the end of that, once again, they're like, what's next? And off the cuff, I had nothing. And so I said, okay, here's what we can do next. And I'm like, okay, let me go create this part of the program. And then at the end of that, they wanted something else. So I also created a mini program for them also. And as I just kept doing that, it just kept evolving. And so one Saturday, I took some time to just pray. I'm like, today, this Saturday, we're going to seek God and see what He wants me to do. I was feeling a little frustrated with work and a few other things. And I just thought, okay, it's time for me to just take some time out with God and see what He wants me to do, see what's going on. And so I'm sitting in my living room. I had, of course, like we normally do, I probably just dumped everything out. God, this. And then I'm like, okay, now what? And it was like God said, now I need you to sit and listen. And honestly, I think I sat there for at least a good 3 hours and it was just nothing. It was just silence, which a lot of times is uncomfortable. It used to be for me, not anymore. And then finally I got up, I walked into my office and I looked at a vision board that we had created. It was a simple vision board, just with a few different things on it. And as I started looking at it, all of the emotions came. There's tears flowing down my face. And I'm like, okay, why am I crying at my vision board? And it's like I heard the question, that one question that, why am I being asked this simple question? And the simple question was, why have you not done some of these things? And I realized at that moment that I had been empowering so many other people that I had kind of lost my power. And so as I stood there with all the emotion, with all the tears, I made a commitment to myself and to God that I was going to start pursuing these things that I had put on my vision board. And one of the things was my business. And another thing was my retirement. And I'm like, okay, it's time to do it. And so from that point on, I started pursuing it more and tried to make a plan and all that stuff.
Wow, I can see how that her authenticity, your authenticity kind of coming to a culmination with that moment in front of your vision board of, why haven't you done these things? And it's almost like, God looking over your shoulder and saying, why haven't you done some of these things? Because
Yes,
He knew that you were capable of it. These were authentic goals, things that you had set because, they were really important to you
yes,
and important enough to put it on the vision board. And so, of course, you're capable of this, and this is authentically who you are and what you want to create. I'm actually feeling emotional even thinking about it, of being in that moment, having that come together. This is what, creating these things is the authentic me.
yes,
This is my expression of my authentic self to go and create these things. And for you
yes,
to, that was your moment of inspiration. That was the get inspired and go live in your power moment where you're like, I'm going to do it. I,
yes.
I love that. And I know that you did make some choices about, your job at IBM at that point. We're going to talk about that in just a second. I want to kind of go back to these women that you were working with. How powerful, and I hadn't really, put this together. I know it's powerful to do group programs and to have,
Mhm.
retreats and people in the same room and stuff like that. I know that that's really powerful. When you were talking about that, I was thinking, these are corporate women. These are women who, when you're working at a job, you can't show your emotion. You can't,
Right.
because it kind of is perceived as weakness.
Yes.
And so it's like, that was a really safe space that you created there. I don't know if it would have been as powerful if it had been one-on-one with your
I
friend.
agree 100%.
She
I
would
think
have
it would have
felt
kept
it,
walls up. Mhm.
yeah, she would have loved the time that you spent with her. But to have these other women confirming her emotions,
Yes.
that is powerful. I had to speak that out because going through something where you feel like you're kind of alone is one
Mhm.
thing. But when you're going through something together, which I know your program is very good at bringing people together, that
Yes.
you really can let the walls down when you know that everybody else is kind of on the same page. They're experiencing the same thing.
Agreed. And I've kind of coined this phrase, we talk about, you've heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
Well, I say it takes a community or a sisterhood for seasoned women to flourish and live authentically. And so
Wow, that's
one of the things
beautiful.
that I try to provide for my clients.
Wow, I love that. I'm gonna go back and listen to that again and I'm gonna write it down. It takes a sisterhood. Can you say it again? Because you
So it
sounds like,
takes a community or a sisterhood to flourish and live authentically.
wow, beautiful. I love that. I really believe it. I believe that that's true. That's awesome. I work with men and women probably equally, and so I don't, specifically just work with women,
Uh-huh.
but I do know that there is something about, women coming together. There's
Yes.
a really huge support system. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, I did want to also mention one last thing that I think is really important is that the first thing you did was you helped them get out of their box. You
Yes.
allowed them to kind of get beyond who they had defined themselves with to start with. And I wanted to speak that again because I think that is a really good first step. If somebody's listening to this and you're just, maybe kind of showing up to work every day or you're doing the same thing and it's not feeling 100% authentic, I think that would be a really good exercise, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you don't do that, you basically get yourself in a rut. And I think you also burn out a lot quicker.
Yeah. In fact, can you give our listeners maybe like a little exercise or a little piece of advice, like something that they could do? Maybe not a piece of advice, we'll save that for later, but like a little exercise or just something that they can do to help them get out of their box.
Absolutely.
Ignite your inner spark and start each day inspired and empowered with my daily GPS process. I'm Wileen Benson. Daily GPS is the best morning meditation and inspired vision technique that has you co-creating your life with your creator. Inspired shortcuts help you focus on the most important tasks to accomplish your goals faster, unleash your true potential, and transform your life into one that will give you ultimate success and fulfillment. Do it now. Visit WileenBenson.com to download your free daily GPS starter kit and start living in your power today.
So I love to write things down. And so one of the things I do is list on a piece of paper, 1 to 10, and I just answer the question, what is it that really drives you? What excites you? And I ask that question 10 times and write down the answers. And then I go back and I delete the things that are just normal. So for example, being with my family,
Of course.
that's kind of a common answer. So I delete all those common answers and then I'm left with the ones that are real, that really, really excite me. And then I ask myself, what am I doing currently in my life that drives me and that is related to these things that I have listed?
I love that. I can see the pattern here because that's kind of what you did with your vision board, right? You wrote down the
Absolutely.
things that really excited you, and then
Yep.
you were standing in front of the vision board. Why haven't I done these things?
Exactly.
So why don't I go out and do them? Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about that transition that happened once you were standing in front of the vision board. You had that moment of inspiration. I'm going to do something about this. And I know that you made some decisions based on that. So why don't you just kind of take us through that transition?
Absolutely. I'm one of those people who I don't like to quit things. And so being at IBM for 30 something years, it's hard to walk away and things were going great there. I had a great career. And I can remember, I think it was during the pandemic. I had went downstairs to grab some lunch and was looking outside. Everything was feeling great. I wasn't frustrated or anything. And it's like I heard the Lord say, now is the time. And I'm like, what? It's time to go. And I'm like, I can't go. I'm like, it's the pandemic. And so I thought about that and I started thinking, okay, maybe I can take a leave of absence or maybe I'll go part-time. and, kind of test the waters a little bit. But that still just didn't, it wasn't resonating with me. And I knew that wasn't the path. So then IBM was getting ready to have a layoff and my division was going to be included. And I thought, okay, this is great. Maybe they'll lay me off. Like, lay me off. Come on, lay me off. So I actually asked my manager, I said, well, can you guys lay me off? And he said, no, I cannot do that. He said, there is no reason that I could give to lay you off. HR would not let me do that, even if I wanted to. And I said, okay. So then I talked to my vice president about going part-time. And she said, normally it doesn't happen for you, but I can make that happen if that's what you want to do. And finally I realized that no, that's not the right answer. I need to leave. It's time for me to go. So the day that I told my boss that I was leaving, I said, I'm going to go ahead and retire. He said, okay, but I was going to give you a raise today. And he said, actually, I want to go ahead and give it to you for the month that you have left.
Wow.
So I said, okay. And so I retired. I took 4 months off. And then I came out of retirement and took another job at a small startup. And during those 4 months, I took some time to decompress. I didn't realize how stressed I was. I thought I was pretty relaxed, but I'm like, no, wow, there's stress here. And I didn't realize that. And then I was also starting to build my coaching business, but I really didn't know what I was doing and didn't realize at the time that I really needed a business coach. So for anyone doing that, I would strongly recommend that you get some type of a coach, advisor, or someone to help you in whatever field you're going into. I joined this small company and I'm with this company now. It's a small startup and it helps actually other small startups to grow. So we do their marketing, we do their product management, we do their program management, etc. I've been here for about 2 years. The good thing about it is that because they are startup, there are a lot of different skills that I didn't have, but I'm learning. So I'm learning about marketing. I'm learning about sales. I'm learning about lead magnets and all of these different things. And I'm meeting, amazing people who are basically where I am, except their product is a little bit different than mine. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the negotiations I've done with them, if that's okay.
Yeah, let me pause for just a second. And
Okay.
because I know our listeners, I know me personally, I've been in that situation before where I've known it's time to go and I just like finagle and try to figure out how I can stay a little bit longer. And,
Yes,
you had this 33, it's like 33 years, like I can't get that up. Like, and I'm going to get a raise today. So
exactly.
I mean, there's so many reasons to stay, right? And they don't want you to leave. But a lot of times, I think we put off the decision and that nagging, it's time, it's time, it's time. You can't really be happy, if you can't be happy there. If you
No.
keep getting that inspiration to go and you keep trying to negotiate and figure out ways, maybe I can just like dip my toe in, or whatever. But yeah, when it's time to go, I think that takes a lot of courage. And at the same time, you talked about how you took those 4 months off to decompress, which is great. You needed, some time in between. And then this new opportunity came up. And so that was perfect timing too, because you'd had that 4 months to decompress.
Yes.
And I really want to point this out to our listeners because a lot of times I know me personally, there have been times when I've thought, I need to go get a job. I need some consistent income, because the coaching business, you're not necessarily getting paid the same every single week. And
Right.
so I've had that thought before, but this job that you have is not one of those desperation, got to have some money, kind of things. This actually is part of your evolution.
Yes.
I feel like, where you're at with a startup company, helping startup companies, and then, so you're learning for yourself. It is supplementing your income while you're building your coaching business. And also, let's go ahead and talk about some of those negotiations that you made there, because a lot of times, back to her authenticity, you go into a job or a situation, you kind of try to hide what you really want to do because you don't want people to know I'm doing this coaching business on the side and I'm hoping that I can quit and go do this full time. But you've been very, very open and had some really great, and I know God created this job specifically for you because of the reception that you've gotten. So go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So when I joined the company, the role was brand new, and basically I helped to create my own role. And my plan was just to go and come into this company and just be an employee. I wasn't looking for leadership or anything of that nature. And after like a month or two, they asked me to become a leader over my department. And I was like, well, okay, fine. It shouldn't be too bad. So then as we continued to progress, I found myself actually coaching some of the other leaders and giving a lot of advice and giving input. And I'm like, wait a minute. One of my friends said to me, she said, wait a minute, you're doing more consulting type stuff. You're giving a lot of information, and that's not really your role. And I'm like, that's okay. I like to give. I'm going to help. I'm going to jump in. It's a startup. But as I thought about it, I'm like, I'm not really getting paid for what I'm doing. And there were times at IBM when I first started where I wouldn't say anything. It's like you're not getting paid, but you don't say anything. Because if you do, and in my case, being a Black female, at times we're considered to be angry. And I had actually shared that with the CEO. I said, I'm going to be just even keeled. I'm not going to make any ruffles. And we had a meeting one time and they said, what is the one thing that you want to say that you feel like you can't say? And so I shared that. I said, I never want to be perceived as an angry Black woman. I want to be able to be strong and to speak. And they said, that don't ever happen. I said, okay. And so when this situation happened where I'm like, I need to be paid more, I was hesitant at first, and then I decided it's a new day. And if I'm going to be authentic, I'm going to have the conversation. And so I had the conversation with the CEO and the director of operations. And basically, the question was, do you value me? Do you value what I bring to the team? Do you value my leadership? Long story short, he said, yes. I said, then we need to do something about the pay. They ended up adjusting my salary. It's where it needed to be and it's where it needs to be now. It worked out for me, but it took courage for me to do that, because doing that years ago in my career at IBM, my perception was that it would not be received. And maybe it would have been. Maybe I should have spoken up sooner in my career at IBM. But my perception, my limiting beliefs were that if you do, you're going to be labeled, or this isn't going to happen, or that's going to happen. And so being authentic here and where I am now, it allows me to just be free to be myself. And I told myself, the worst thing that could happen is they say no. And that's really not a bad thing. No is okay, because I say no now. It's been really great, and I'm learning great, and they have respect for me. I have respect for them. So yeah, that was a pivotal point, not only in my life, but also at this place that I'm working currently.
Wow, beautiful. I love what you're saying about, that it's okay if they say no, because I say no now. And
Yes,
that level of respect that you have for yourself, realizing that moment that you realized I'm not being authentic, it's not in balance. The value is not even.
right.
And, the value that I'm receiving is not even for the value that you're giving. And it almost is like you were doing it not for yourself, but you're doing it for the relationship. You're doing it
Yes,
for the good of the company, even because you can create relationship debt if you continue to give and you're not, receiving, and
absolutely.
it becomes inauthentic. There, it's like, and then there does tend to be emotions happening
Yes,
when things like that happen. So that's awesome. And going back to, your past history in IBM not showing up authentically because your perception, expectations, thinking that there were going to be certain expectations, and you perceiving that, like we talked about before, that the perception and the expectations can keep us from being authentic. And then, it's like nobody knows how to treat you. Nobody
right,
knows what to expect. And
right.
so how important, oh my gosh, if we could all just really step up and claim what's ours, what we feel is right. And not because it's like, oh, I deserve this. It's because I want, this to be a really great relationship.
Yes,
And I want to be able to continue to bring this value. And if you value that, then, for us to be able to work together authentically, then, I need to receive value in return.
absolutely.
That's really, really
Absolutely.
awesome. Okay. Oh, I wanted to also bring out for our listeners that you also had them write something in your contract that you were very open about. You're building your coaching business and you're it's almost like you're learning from them and at the same time building something that eventually you're probably going to step away. Who knows, maybe.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that too.
We all fill out contracts. I hadn't done that at IBM. I think I filled out one, but as we change roles, we fill them out. And so one of the things in my contract, it said that I would not do anything that was competing with the startup. And the language was pretty simple, but I really wanted to simplify it more because I didn't want anything down the line, knowing that my coaching business would grow. I didn't want anything down the line to, be a legal issue or anything of that nature. And so I went back through it and I read it and I said, hey, we really need to update this. I want to specifically call out the name of my coaching business. So that section of the contract says, I won't do anything that is competing. However, I do have a coaching business that I'm currently working as well. And so they agreed to do that. And we named we haven't updated it, but we need to update it. So currently it does say that she has her own business, Stephanie A. Brown Coaching and Consulting LLC. And that was huge because I had not worked at a company where they knew what I was doing, as well as I would tell them, hey, I'm taking a half a day off because I need to go do this for coaching. And they were like, hey, that's awesome. Go for it. We're rooting for you. So just really having that freedom to be able to grow at a company and they know what you're doing is just, it's second to none.
That's awesome. It sounds like you are working for a company that really promotes that authenticity too, because, they're a startup helping startups and
Yes,
they know that you have a startup. And so they're authentically supporting a startup, which says volumes for them that they really do walk the talk,
absolutely.
that's wonderful. Two words came to me as you've been sharing: honest and open. And I think
Yes,
those two words are almost synonymous with being authentic.
agreed.
And so, if you kind of look inside yourself, for our listeners, look inside yourself, am I being honest? Am I being open? Not hiding behind something. You can say yes, strongly, boldly to those questions. Then I would say that you're either are being authentic or you're very much on your way to doing
Very
that.
much so.
And the things that you've shared, the successes, the celebrations that have happened because of that, not to be afraid of it. And yes, there might be some situations where people would be like, yep, can't work here anymore, whatever. Good riddance, if you're not going to let me be authentic. So yeah, it's super, super important. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
sharing.
Absolutely.
All right. I know you have a freebie that you want to offer, and I'm super excited about this. And I'm going to be telling everyone, well, actually, I'm going to share what it is and have you talk a little bit about it. And then I'll tell them how to get in touch with you. And while I'm telling how to get in touch with you, I want you to kind of be thinking about just like a last piece of advice that you can
Okay.
give to someone who is really struggling with being authentic. See, so it looks like you probably already know what that's going to be, but I'll give you a minute to think about it. Tell us about this free offer that you've so generously given for our listeners: faith empowered,
Absolutely.
authentic living. Tell us a little bit about
Yes.
that.
Okay. So it's a 30-day devotional, and it'll basically have some insights, reflections, some practical guidance that is all around living your purpose, living authentically, and it is based on Christian beliefs. Basically, the way I wrote this, it came out of a 30-day time of well, let me say it this way. Every year, our church, we devote January to a time of consecration. We have times of fasting. And so I decided this year I'm like, every year I get inspired, I get encouraged. So this year I decided to write down every day what I was feeling, what I was thinking, what I was experiencing. And I'm like, I felt like the Lord said, let's put this in a devotional. And so that's what I have been doing. I think it will be a blessing. I've been reading through it and I've been blessed by rereading it. I'm like, did I write this? But each of the days you will see that there are scriptures, there are questions to reflect on. In some cases, there will even be a few little exercises that they can do also.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh. And I've had those experiences too, where I go back and I'm like, did I write this? Who wrote this? And God wrote it, right? It was just those words
Exactly.
that flowed through you. So you know it's inspired. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. I love those concentrated times of consecration and devotion. There's
Yes.
so much, you get so much out of it. So that's amazing. So it's faith empowered, authentic living. And to get that, Stephanie has given us her email and also her website that you can go to. And I'll have all this in the show notes, so you can just go down there and click. So team, TEAM at herauthenticity.com is the email address. And then the website is herauthenticity.com. So again, I'll have those links in the show notes directly to that devotional, Faith Empowered Authentic Living. So be sure to check that. And we'll also have how to get in touch with you, how to connect with you on social media and all of those things. So we'll make sure we got all that in the show notes. All right. So Stephanie, before we end, I would just love to give you a last moment to give some advice to someone who is feeling like they're not living authentically and they need to start doing that more.
Awesome. Will do. Well, first, I would say our world is so noisy. So, first, I would say take some time to just be still and teach yourself to listen so that we could hear God's voice. Even when we go into prayer, a lot of times, what we think prayer is we just dump it all out and then we get up and we go our way. But many times, God wants us to sit and listen and hear what he has to say, either through a scripture or maybe it's a still small voice or whatever it is. So take the time to do that. And then when you feel like God is prompting you to make some changes, don't think that you have to figure it all out. You don't have to figure it all out at that moment. You won't have all of the answers. It makes me think about Abraham. When God called Abraham, he basically just told him to go. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't really know what he was doing. But as he went, then God unfolded the blueprint for his life. And many times, God will do the same for us. And that blueprint really looks a lot more complicated than we think that we can actually do it. And I believe that's God's plan, because if it was so simple that we could do it, then we wouldn't depend on him. And so I would just say, start where you are, have the conversation with God. He wants us to talk to him. One of the other things, and then I'll be quiet. I've started reading the Bible again from the beginning. And I was reading about Moses, where he just totally disqualified himself from everything. But when I got to Leviticus, now I'm almost at the end of Leviticus, and I started highlighting every time it says, God said to Moses. And I knew that God had spoken to Moses, but I didn't realize how much God spoon fed him. It's like everything God said to Moses, tell them this. God said to Moses, do this. And I'm like, if God did that for Moses, then he'll do the same for us, because the Bible says he's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And he doesn't have a respect of a person. So God wants us to live our authentic life because he created us that way. He made us unique. And you notice, after he created creation, everything, he said it was good. And even after he created man, it's like, it was really good, because then he took a rest. And so I would say begin with your relationship with Christ, spending time with him, and giving some of that time of solitude so that you can hear what he's saying to you.
Beautiful. I love that. And you even brought up this idea of authenticity and what we can expect from God, because he is authentic,
Yes.
right? And we know that we can expect, if we ask and listen, we are going to hear something. And
Absolutely.
it might be 3 hours later, might be three
Yes.
days later, it might be three, whatever. Yes, I 100% is such awesome advice. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. This has been such a fun interview, and I feel like we have been totally fed by everything that you've shared. You walk the talk. You are an example of what you're encouraging people to do and inviting people to do. Just you're doing great things by bringing these women together and helping them to be authentic, to be honest, to be open, and to really start doing these things that they want to do, and
Yes.
you're embracing that yourself too. Instead of just helping others, you're doing that for yourself as well. So really, really great advice and great example for all of us here.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being here. And super excited for another episode of Get Inspired and Live in Your Power coming up. And until next time, you go out and get inspired and live in your power.